General Spencer, thank you very much. Thanks for your long-time support. And some folks did not get the note that I was going to be the speaker. As I got in the elevator this morning and started up, I said, where are you going? He goes, I'm going to the AFA breakfast. I said, you're here to hear Dr. Roper. And he goes, well, yes, I am. I hear he's a really great speaker. I said, well, you're going to be woefully disappointed. So anyway, thanks for AFA for allowing us this opportunity and for bringing everybody together, and thanks for the opportunity to stand here and talk to you today. And I want to start with apologies up front. This is the second time in a row that I have been the speaker that has been called in because a more eloquent speaker was not able to be here with you. The last time I was a fill-in for Lieutenant General Lori Robinson, or General Lori Robinson, because she got called away on things and I got drawn in, and now you had Dr. Roper and you get me. So you get older, more seasoned speaker with a lot less cranium cover than Dr. Roper has, and you get a southern drawl. So just making sure I kind of set the stage for kind of where we're at. Today, my focus really is going to be on what we're doing for fielding tomorrow's Air Force faster and smarter, and then I'll open it up for a few questions at the end. Before I go into exactly what I'm going to talk about with faster and smarter, I do have a couple things I probably need to cover. I do have a goal today that came out of actually the last time that I spoke at an AFA breakfast. Last time at the AFA breakfast, without talking to the Secretary of the Air Force, I decided it would be a great idea to tell a story about a conversation that she and I had during her confirmation prep, and I shared that with everyone without pre-clearing that with the Secretary of the Air Force that I was going to use her name and I was going to do this. The media, my friends over here, all wrote on that, as you should have. And it was in the media the next morning. And I sat at my desk kind of going, okay, I wonder what the response is going to be. The reality of it was the Secretary was very okay with it, but I don't plan to go down that path again today without pre-coordinating her. So that was a lesson learned. The other one is that I want to make sure I get out to everybody, and hopefully you will use this as you frame the questions that you may wish to ask me later. Please remember the budget has not been submitted. I am not going to go into great detail about what's going to be in the budget. I need to leave our senior decision makers all the decision space, and I don't want to influence that in any way, shape, or form. So there are a couple things that have been in the media that if you ask me, I'll try to talk to. If you go very deep into the budget, then I'm probably going to tell you thanks. After we get it rolled out, we'll go into more detail. So hopefully you will use that to shape some of the ideas of what you want to talk to me about. Okay, so let me get started here. Most important thing for our industry partners here, thank you for your partnership. We have the greatest Air Force in the world, and we are trying to go faster and smarter so that we get the technology into the hands of the young men and women that we're sending into harm's way. We can only do that with your partnership. So thank you, and I'll talk. I think we're all learning a little as we go through this, and so I'll talk about that, but I want to make sure I get that up front. You all are key parts of this. Dr. Roper does regret that he's not able to be here, and he is really pushing hard on multiple fronts so that we can move faster and smarter, which we believe directly supports the National Defense Strategy, to deliver performance at the speed of relevancy, and to get after what we're trying to do in this now defined in the National Defense Strategy competition that we find ourselves in, to make sure that we continue to have that technological advantage. The first area that we want to talk about there is give a little bit of an update on what we're doing for rapid acquisition programs and the Century Challenge that he's laid out for us. Much of what we are doing for our accelerations and trying to go faster in this area would not have been possible without the support of Congress and the authorities that Congress has pushed through to give us act reform and allow us to do some things that we had not been able to do in the past. We greatly appreciate those authorities, and we want to make sure that we operate within those bounds and we keep them informed. Our goal out of this Century Challenge is to save 100 years on acquisition programs, cut that out of the schedule so that we're delivering capabilities that much quicker. We're doing this through using the Section 804 authorities that Congress granted us. through tailoring the 5000 series in certain ways and things that maybe we didn't need all those authorities, but we're exercising those things now and getting away from following, I've got to go through every step of a 5000 series that we can. And then just doing smart business things and working with you to find the best ways to answer problems. Today, we estimate that we're at 71 years of savings within the last year that we've cut out acquisition programs by doing many of these things. Now we got to execute to those. Some of those may move a little left or right depending on how they execute, but right now, based on where we've drawn the timeline starting the programs, that's how much we estimate that we've saved. We've done that through 20 efforts that are operating under the 804 authorities and 10 efforts right now that we're calculating up that we did through the tailored 5000 series. So we're making moves. We've said we're going to go do it. We're changing the way we're doing it. We got our program managers and our teams on board. When we initially started it, not everyone was really sure how that was going to work. There was a little bit of reticence, and once we demonstrated we were going, now our program managers and everybody are on board, and they're looking for ways to try to get things done faster and smarter, and they realize the questions they're going to get from leadership if they don't have some of those ideas in the presentations that they give us. One thing that's fundamental to how we go do this, and one of the clear communication points we've had with our teams and we're having with industry, is that this has got to be speed with discipline. This is not just go as fast as you want to go and rush something out there. We've still got to think through all of the illities and make sure that we have a minimum viable product, and make sure we have a strategy for how we're going to sustain something, and make sure we have a strategy for how we're going to modify it over time, how we put open mission systems in some cases into these. We have to think our way through those things because we all are aware of systems we put out in the field that we've rushed to the field that we didn't do some of those things before, and we're still paying the price for it. We got to make sure we do enough testing, operational and developmental testing. We can't exclude either one of those. We got to make sure that what we're giving the warfighter is going to work. Those are all things that we're trying to balance up as we look at the technology challenges and what we try to push forward. The other thing that everybody needs to be aware of, an approval to go do this is not just approval from now until you get to the field. We don't just take our hands off. One of the things we're very focused on is pushing authorities down. I've briefed all y'all on that before, that we've delegated ACAT 3s. We're delegating all the authorities down and streamlining as much as we can. But we set milestones on these programs that people have got to come back and tell us how they're performing. We set guardrails so that if they get outside the bounds of performance and they've got particular areas we're worried about, that they got to come back and talk to us so that we can change strategies. So this is not just go and take your hands off. This is go, speed with discipline. We trust you to do it, but come back and let us know how we're performing. Let us know where your challenges are so that we can hopefully help you move forward. One of the other things we have to make sure we're doing with this is with 804 authorities, it's not a 5000 series. All those guidelines don't necessarily apply, but we still have to keep Congress informed. We still have to do test plans. We have to do a lot of this to be clear and articulate with what we're doing. Congress has given us those authorities. We need to be transparent with them and share with them where we're going on these efforts. And we need to make sure that they have the insight that they have and awareness of what we're trying to do. Right now on the 804 programs, we're writing up annual report, 3 reports a year, streamlined a little bit from what we would historically have done, but 3 reports a year so that we can keep Congress informed on what we're doing to move forward. So we're trying to go fast, but we're also trying to do it with discipline. We're trying to make sure we're considering all the factors and tailoring where we can to make sure we're doing things, but we're also trying to make sure we keep Congress and leadership informed. So that's on that part. Agile Software. I've talked about this before, but I'll give you kind of the latest of kind of where we're at. If you look at the systems we're putting in the field today, everything really is software. It's the foundation that about everything is built on. I've had people describe some of our weapon systems as a whole hundreds of millions of lines of code with a aluminum outline or whatever around it to hold it all together. So the reality of it is we got to stay focused on that. And quite frankly, when I stepped into this role, we had a few programs that I have been talked at and I've talked about that weren't exactly performing very well in the software world. And we needed to make a change. So this all started with we started in certain pockets before, but when we really started talking about what we were changing, we started this when we started the Air Operations Center Pathfinder efforts. We stood up a small team to do Agile software development, and we were trying to get capability out in the field. We brought the warfighter in. We knew immediately what they needed. We were pushing things out. We were letting them look at it. We were developing side by side. And that was kind of our first instantiation of what we were trying to go do. Now what we're doing is we're trying to grow that out. Dr. Roper last year designated and changed the name of our PEO for battle management to our PEO for digital. So the designation of PEO digital was to take and continue to grow the software factory and the development that we had started, and take the lessons learned and what we were doing and propagate those out to wider portions of our acquisition enterprise, share it with our other program executive officers, share it with our Sustainment Center, share it with industry in a lot of ways so that we were all educated and we were moving forward together. Today, we are continuing to work on our Operations Center. We're doing an effort right now where we're partnering with Lockheed Martin on Alice, working on the F-35, where we're doing a trial run, working our way through that. We're moving to an Agile software development on Space Command and Control, and we're moving to a developmental environment on the F-22, with the goal being to get capability out into the field faster than we have before, streamline some of those things, develop the software with a warfighter input that we're getting rapid feedback, and more along the lines of commercial practices. Now, I've told you before, I don't believe we'll ever get to commercial. Okay, I don't actually believe that would be in our best interest. It's not like an app that I have on my phone that you can just dump an update whenever you want to. Okay, the reality of it is we need to make sure we're pushing capabilities to the field when the field can accept it. I got to make sure the operators and the maintainers are prepared. They've got the right training for what we're doing. Some of those are going to be very easy, and we can do it in a rapid manner. Some of those may be new weapons or capabilities we would add in the future, and that will not be as easy to do. And we need to make sure we get the right training and we get everybody on board with what we're trying to do to make sure we're operating the right way. These efforts along Agile Software have also identified a few things where we have got to continue to grow and work, and identified some areas that in our system may not exactly be set up for this methodology of how we do business. So for example, cost estimating. If you've always done your software development and everything in a waterfall manner, and you shift to Agile, how do you do cost estimating, which is based off historical performance? And how do you roll that into your budgeting cycle to tell everybody what you need? It's a different story. So we're taking the lessons learned, we're monitoring our performance on the programs we started off with, and what we're doing is we're going to roll that in, and we'll work with our Air Force Cost Analysis Agency to update those things as we go forward with performance so that we're getting better estimates for how we do it. Because right now, we don't have a foundation that what we're doing is built on. We're kind of doing something we as a service haven't done traditionally, and we've got to learn from that. How do we do the contracting? It's a different way of doing business when you're going to continuously be updating and working on software. What contract structure do you work? You can throw one out at me right now and ask me if it's the best, and I will tell you in many cases, each and every one of them is the best. Each case has got to be looked at independently. We'll share lessons learned as we go forward. We're trying a few different things, but we're learning how we go about doing that. Source selection. How do I do source selection when I am going into an Agile software development phase? Or I'm going to go into a program that's going to do Agile software development? Do I completely trust everything that I get in a proposal without having someone set up a developmental ops environment so that I can see them perform in that environment, to know that they have the capability, to know that they have the technical wherewithal of a workforce that can execute to that so that they can push it out to the field? Or do I carry 2 or 3 and give a task and let it be demonstrated? That's a different mindset. We're working our way through that with our contracting team and our program managers to see how we go forward in the future, and we're trying some different things. The other one I'll talk about is testing. Many of you have probably looked at my bio. I have a little bit of test background. And one of the things that I frequently hear is test is not being responsive, or test doesn't want to do this. The reality of it is, between Mr. Beeler, who's running DOT&E, who we brought in on a lot of these Agile software efforts early, who used to be running the FFRDC for software, he has been a great partner. He is openly dialogue with us about how we do our OT testing. and he's willing to entertain some ideas that we haven't had before, and we're having a very collaborative environment as we discuss those things, so that's been very good. The other one I'll give kudos to is Mr. Devin Cate, who's the lead of Air Force TE. Devin, realizing that we're moving to more of these 804 efforts and realizing that we're moving to more of the Agile software, he started working with the test community writ large, coming up with guidelines and building strategies for how we go do this in a more effective manner. So we're partnering with all those folks as we go forward to make sure. We're making tweaks to the requirements process. Okay, we are building rapid requirements processes so that we can go through the requirements process at the speed of relevance and not necessarily tie ourselves down to the JCIDS process, which is held up and is bureaucratic in a lot of different ways. So we're making a lot of strides in those areas. The other one that I will call out is there was a Defense Science Board study last year, and they went out and looked at acquiring Agile. If you haven't seen it and you're in the industry, I would encourage you to reach out to the team and get a look at it. There's some very good things that are in there that the team came up with, and we're reading through that, picking out lessons learned and trying to apply them to our efforts in the Air Force. The other one, this is kind of highlighted, is a personnel thing. And really and truly, most of us realize that any of this we do, the foundation of it all is our people. And this is an area that we've not historically done, building a lot of software and creating a software factory and hiring a bunch of software developers in. As you can probably imagine, that is a very critical resource that a lot of people are competing for. We don't have as many of those folks as we would probably want for all of us, and we're all competing against each other to try to get that talent. So what we're going back and looking at is how do we recruit, how do we hire, how do we train, and how do we retain. We got to get all those right if we're going to keep all those people in. Now, I'm not saying we're going to build a team that's going to develop every bit of software that goes in Air Force platforms. That's not what I'm trying to say. We do have to have some pockets of that we would be developing software, but I also have to have people that are educated enough in the process for Agile software development so that they can manage programs. A geezer like me has not developed software like that, and putting me in charge of that program would create some challenges for me because I would not have the technical wherewithal to look at that the same way as someone that had a background in that. How do we train our program managers to be ready to manage those programs? How do we get them the right experiences? That's one that we're looking at. The other one we got here is how do we handle this with our military? We've not had a duty code, an AFSC for us, where you're a software coder or a developer. That's not traditionally what we've done. We've got engineers and we have some specialties, but we don't have that particular skill set. And I would say that the talent to do software development is not always resonant just within our engineering community. The example that I will use, of a couple of years back, we had a demo day, a display day out at the Pentagon, and I went and talked to a young lieutenant. And if you ever want to get recharged from what's going on, go talk to a young lieutenant and talk to them about what they're doing and thrive off that passion, because it'll re-energize you to be able to go fight a couple more budget battles or do a couple of other things. But this young man was beaming, and he starts talking to me about this display and all these things it's showing for this capability that he's been working on. And I said, that's pretty cool. What company did the coding for all the displays and all that? And he goes, oh, no, sir, I did all that myself. I said, so you have a computer science or a software development degree, or what do you do? He goes, oh, no, I don't have any of that. Because I knew what I needed. I went and bought the books, and I taught myself how to code, and I wrote all the code myself so that I could make it do what I wanted to. Okay? So, what we've got to try to figure out, and as the senior acquisition individual that looks out over the 6'2", 6'3" career fields, right now I got to work on how do I capitalize on that knowledge base outside of what's the traditional acquisition community, fly those people in, get them that experience, allow them to do it, not hurt them for their long-term career development, and then fleet them back over to what they're doing. How do I measure that talent, and how do I track that talent? You know, most of us have taken the D-Lab. If you don't know what that is, that's the test you take to figure out if you have the skills that they believe would be necessary to learn a foreign language. And you get a score on that. You can probably imagine having been a freshman at the Air Force Academy and having my German instructor explain to me that cadet bunch, it would have been a good idea if they taught you to speak English in Tennessee before they sent you to the Air Force Academy to try to learn how to speak German. I did not do particularly well on that test, but many of our people do, and we use that to put them into certain classes and go do certain things. We've got to come up with some methodology for how can I capitalize on the skills that people have in the area of software development. How do I allow that to them to grow in that area, do something they're passionate about, capitalize on it, but not hurt their future development. And we have to figure out how we keep our civilians we hire in current, capable, and ready to go. That part will probably fall on the organized, train, and equip function that will, we're still working through that. It'll probably reside at AFMC, but that's an area that we'll have to be focused on as we go forward. Pitch Day. Some of you have heard about this, 6 and 7 March. That's where we're going to have companies coming in, pitching their small idea, or their ideas, they're not small ideas, their ideas, so that we can decide who are going to get phase 1 small business innovative research contracts. Our goal is to hit a vast number of those. We've had the data calls out. We're building off of the earlier work we did where we set a goal of we were going to award 50 contracts in 50 hours. By doing this, we did that down in Austin. We delivered over 100 contracts in 40 hours. So we were very successful in what we did to get those people off on smaller efforts done with a GPC card for phase 1 small business innovative research so that we could get out. And what we're really trying to do is reach out to a part of industry that we've not historically been able to reach. How do we bring them in and get awareness of what they're doing and allow them within the constraints of that work with us as a department so that hopefully we can learn more, figure out what their innovative ideas are, and capitalize on that so that we can move forward. Right now our focus is on 3 program executive officers, ISR Soft, PEO Digital, and C3INN. So really the comm areas, the communication, the networking, our intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and what we're doing with software and what we're doing in battle management. Those are the areas we're predominantly focused on. Our goal here is to maximize the utility of our small business innovative research dollars. We get those dollars every year from Congress. They're allocated into an area where we got to put them into that program. We need to maximize how we're using those dollars, and this is to demonstrate we can do it. Will we get it 100% right this time? Probably not. Will we learn from it and adjust and move forward? Most definitely. So that's coming up here soon. It'll be in New York, 6th and 7th March, and we should have a lot of folks that should be excited about doing that. Last big one I'll hit, and then I'll close and then open it up because I know I'm probably going long. Rapid Sustainment Office. Most of you know we stood this up. This is really an effort to tackle our sustainment costs, try to drive those down, and at the same time improve readiness and get more aircraft in the air or systems available for our operators. Most of you know roughly 70% of the cost of a system is in sustainment over its life cycle. And what we're trying to do is go far and wide and look at what are the innovative technologies that are out there, what is industry doing, what is academia finding that they're doing, what are the areas that we can invest, not to get a return necessarily just on one platform. What we're actually looking for is things that we can apply writ large across the enterprise to help us. Some of the areas we're working on right now are additive manufacturing, cold spray repair technologies. We are in an effort right now to do conditions-based maintenance. We've got 3 trials going on there. We've got it on the AWACS, we've got it on C5, and we're doing it on the B1. Those are the 3 platforms right now that we're working on that because that's not something that we have historically done. We have a lot of data. How do you look at those data in the right timelines to do the repairs at the right time versus having an aircraft non-mission capable and be able to move forward? So those are all ones we're doing. You'll hear more about that. The thing about that we're doing there is we have stood that up in the Lifecycle Management Center. We have given them PEO authorities, meaning they have the same authorities as what we have with our other PEOs. Their activities of that report directly to Dr. Roper for what we're trying to do. It is definitely a partnership with AFMC, the Air Force Sustainment Center, the Lifecycle Management Center. And this is an area that we're excited about. And if industry's got ideas, we would love to get them. I've had 2 conversations this week, one with an industry partner, one with a community that believes they have capabilities in these areas. that we're encouraging them to come in and pitch their ideas and talk to our folks so that we can capitalize on what's out there so that we can continue to do the mission. So again, General Spencer, thanks for your leadership, sir. I've told this before. Some of you may not have heard it though, so I will repeat it. It was roughly 4 years and a little bit ago that General Spencer interviewed me for this job that I'm in today. And I still question whether he thinks he made the right call. I'm pushing me forward for it. But thanks for allowing me the opportunity, sir. Lord knows I've learned a lot in this job. And I appreciate AFA allowing us to be here. Dr. Roper, again, apologies for the media folks. We're working a roundtable. He did not get to talk to you all as much at the KC 46 thing as he wanted to. I think we're working. Shannon's back here. We'll work the final details. I think we're trying to set something up on 6th of February. Did I get the right date? Yes. Shannon's making sure I don't screw that up. So we're trying to do more of a media roundtable on the 6th of February. I know y'all had questions he couldn't answer, so he regrets he's not here. I may take one area of that, not a whole lot in that area, but he will be opening up to a whole lot more depth on that on the 6th of February. Where's Kara? Where's Kara? Stand up. Okay. First, this is our young public affairs captain who just got stuck with me today. She's the one that's sweating bullets right now because she's first engagement in the half as in the air at the air staff level for a public thing, and she got stuck with me. So she's the one right now that's kind of leery as to how this is going to play out. We'll find out if she goes home and tells them she doesn't want to work with me anymore after we get done with this. And for industry, thank you. Thank you again for being partners. When we talk about faster and smarter, and we talk about our bureaucracy, and we talk about what we're doing to try to streamline things, I think you probably have a little of your own bureaucracy and way you've done business as well. I was always told the grass is greener on the other side, and my response to that is, quit spending so much time looking over the fence. Why don't you take care of your own garden and be a little bit better gardener and get your grass a little greener? So we're working on what we can do internal to our bureaucracy. I'm sure you are doing the same because we've all got to work together if we're going to make this happen so that we're getting capabilities out there quicker. And with that, I will stop and I will see if I can take a few questions. General Spencer, you okay with that?
I am, absolutely.
Okay.
I just want to make sure, for those of you that have questions, please state your name and your affiliation, and please only one question. Thank you.
Okay, General Lowe, go for it. You told me you were going to ask, sir, so I'm going to go straight to the person. I will get over here.
My name is Mike Lowe, and I'm a retired Air Force guy and a lifetime AFA member. And first, congratulations, Arnie, on your selection for the 4-star and pending confirmation.
Thank you, sir, for adding that in.
Quickly, I just want to circle back to Section 804.
Yes, sir.
Because I applaud what the Air Force is doing to try and get things started and get some stuff out there, hardware and software. It's really good. But I think there's some skepticism out there. Some people think that the Air Force has found the elixir of acquisition in Section 804. And if you read the rules, it says you've got to provide an operational capability, EOC, within 2 to 5 years. You pick some pretty challenging programs under Section 804, high risk, a couple of hypersonic cruise missile programs, B-52 re-engineering, some cyber, very risky cyber programs. And you've been through one, the light attack aircraft. Now, so at the end of 4 to 5 years, what are you going to do then? You talked about streamlining 5000.1, trashing JSIDs, I hope, but you've got to come up with...
Those were his words, those were not mine.
But you know, there's got to be either a requirement or funding or both.
Yes, sir.
At the end of that. Otherwise, you got guys in industry that are investing a lot of money, and they're looking back at light attack aircraft, which is kind of like 804. You've been through a demo now, good airplanes, and you're saying, okay, the dogs caught the boss. Now what do we do? Nothing. You put it on the back burner. So now you're asking industry to invest hundreds of millions of dollars on some Section 804 programs with no real clear indication of what happens after this initial demo. So my question is, What is your thinking about that? And are you leading industry down a primrose path?
So, great question. Where are we going with that? So folks that may not have heard the question, where are we going with 804 authorities? Are we biting off more than we should chew? And how are we working with industry on how we go forward on all this so that they actually see a return on the investment of what we're trying to do? That
Yes,
close Gerberized, that's a Gerberized my own made up word, taking the difficulty to read it down to like baby food so that Arnie can understand it. I don't believe, sir, that I believe we are taking some areas where we are doing things that are going to be very challenging. I think we're going into those, and this is where we really need industry to help us. We're going into some of these challenging ones, particularly on hypersonics. We're going into them with our eyes wide open. Okay, we realize those are challenging programs. For the 2 efforts that we have, and if we didn't think it was challenging, we probably wouldn't have 2 efforts. We would hitch our wagon to one and we would run. The reality of it is we realize there are technological risks with this area. We do read the media, we do look at what's going on in the world, and we believe this is something that we need to invest in to be able to develop those technologies and see if we can get an operational capability as quickly as we can. Our intent on these is we're going to continue to monitor their performance. We're going to see if they go forward in the way that we're expecting. For one of them, we're building off of years of investment with DARPA, and we are trying to get an operational capability out there as quickly as we can. Where we need your help, and we want your help, is if what I'm asking for is made out of unobtainium, industry, you got to tell me. Okay? I need your assistance. You are aware of what the technology status is. You're aware of what the maturity of it is. You understand some of the limitations. We will ask you questions. You need to tell us. Okay? We need that open and frank feedback. If what I'm asking is made out of unobtainium, I have no desire to go try to put money on it and make us go down a road that we can't get there. We need your help. So, we are trying to change the culture. We are trying to do some things differently. I am looking at things that may not be in the field for a gazillion years. I am looking for min-viable products in certain areas so that we can push them to the field and have a capability in the interim while we invest in more technology and grow more. We are trying to change the JSIDS process. We've got a rapid requirements process that we're working through right now with A5 to streamline that to get a requirement that matches up with what we're trying to do on the acquisition side. We are going to continue to have to work with all parties involved to look at how we handle our money. Because, particularly I'll talk Agile Software. I didn't go into a lot of detail on that one. How you develop that software and how you draw the line between production, sustainment, and remedy, or whatever you want to call it, it's blurry or non-existent. And if it's a cyber vulnerability or something I got to do a program on, I don't have 2 years to wait on a POM process. So we've got to work with all the parties involved. If we really want to do this, it's going to take all of us working together. Some of those areas where we're taking some big steps, we're getting a lot of questions from a lot of people. There are people that are asking us, what are you doing in these areas? And we're working those. And but I believe we're being transparent with industry on what we're trying to do. I believe we're explaining to industry where we're going for the future. And I believe we're trying to be very clear with how we communicate with Congress and with everybody else. Are all of them going to work out? We do experiments to experiment. Not everything is going to result in going forward on programs or doing a whole lot of other things. We learn. That's part of experimentation. That's part of prototyping. So we've just got to continue to clearly communicate and make sure that we set the right expectations, sir. Okay. Yeah. Go for it.
Colin Clark.
Yep, Colin.
Good morning, sir. You're a tester for long time.
I think you just called me old, by the way, but that's okay.
I did.
I call myself a geezer, so it's no big deal.
Pot and kettle. So the DOT&E folks have published their report, God bless them, and the JSF fleet-wide availability has not improved in 3 years, and that's going to be your main fighter. It's still stuck at 60% or below. We won't even mention Mr. Mattis's goal of 80% for the fleet. How worried are you? And what parts of Lockheed's anatomy are you squeezing?
So first off, it's always great being the acquisition guy, coming and speaking at a breakfast with a lot of media when the budget hadn't rolled out, and you know that's what everybody wants to ask you about. And the DOT&E report hit last night, and I don't have a final copy of it in my office. So that's a great position for me to be in as I start trying to answer questions here. I'm not going to duck this one though. I'm going to talk about this one. F-35, we have really placed a big emphasis, and we're working with Lockheed Martin and the JPO. And I'm answering this as the service acquisition executive role that the Air Force has right now, with Admiral Winter being the PEO. We are putting a lot of emphasis into that area. We are trying to reach that 80% MC rate with our combat coded aircraft. It's not going to be 80% for everything, but we're trying to get to 80% for our combat coded aircraft. We are working a lot of different initiatives. We are working a life cycle support plan right now that's probably different than any one that I've seen. It's still in review, so I can't go into a lot of detail. But that life cycle support plan is set on establishing actions that we're going to take as a community. And then in the document, it's got Lockheed Martin POCs and JPO POCs identified. And we're setting timelines and calendars for when we're going to get timelines, dates, milestones to get things done, so that we are seeing that we're getting the performance improvements that we are anticipating. We have a list of systems that are not performing as well as we want, the big drivers. We have improvement programs that we've started in those areas, and we're going to measure if we get the performance that we expect. We had, I won't say how long the meeting was. We had a rather lengthy meeting last week with Lockheed Martin and OSD and the Air Force sitting in the room talking about what we're doing on production, development, sustainment to achieve the goals that we're driving to. So you say you don't even want to talk about the 80%, we're pushing for that. And if we execute the way we think we are, we believe we can make that. It's a challenge, but that's the goal we're pushing at. But here's what our goal is. I don't want to just get 80% this year. I got to keep it up there. So I can't go peak out and then drop back down. Now, I've got to work on that on the F-22 and the F-16 as well. Those are ones we've also been given that challenge. Those are also areas we're putting a lot of time, energy, and effort into. That we're working with the program executive officers. That we're looking at what investments do we need to make to drive that. So we're taking that one on. Yep. I'll get back there for you. Go. We're trying to get to. Okay.
Hi, Pat Host from Jane's.
Hey, Pat.
Hey there. What exactly is wrong with the F-35's gun where the accuracy issues are still yet to be fixed?
So if that's in the DOT report, that's not one that's on the forefront of my cranium, and we'll get back to you. So Shannon and Carol, write that one down. We'll come back. Okay, I'm gonna go here and then I'll come back. Courtney, I thought I had you back there. Thank you.
Yeah, hi sir. I wanted to ask about light attack. Can you give us a little more insight into what has kind of driven this recent kind of path forward to expand experimentation? Is this a cost-driven decision? And can you also lay out a little bit of what the path forward is with experimentation, what that will look like?
Okay, so I'm going to give you part of that, and part of that I'm going to woefully underachieve what you tried to ask me for. The reality of this is, if we go back to when we started the light attack experiment, and we started down this path, one of the very first talking points that the Air Force came out with was this was going to be additive. This was additive to what we were doing as a force. It could not take the place of any of the other missions that we had. It would need to be added on top. That was one of the things we started our dialogue with. This was all about allies and partners, and it was about the mix of forces that we had, 4th and 5th Gen, with whatever we might bring in. Those were the foundational, fundamental things that we started this with. When we got into the budget with where we're at, if you'll recall, the numbers have kind of gone up and down a little bit with the budget over time. And the determination looking at the national defense strategy and the priorities that we have to meet all of those, this was not an area that we would go do a large procurement at this time. Okay, that is the situation that we found ourselves in. So we learned a lot out of the light attack experiment. We exercised muscles that had atrophied over time because we had not done this kind of a experiment and worked with industry to the level of this to get the partnership. We are dialoguing with industry. I have ideas of how we go forward, and I think I know how we go forward. But before I explain all that to you, we have had strong support from Congress in a lot of these areas, and I got to go explain it to them, and I don't want to get in front of my headlights here. So there'll be more that'll come out over this over time. We are planning to broaden the experimentation out and carry the experimentation forward. And I think when our budget hits, you'll understand more of what we're doing. And I got to go to Congress and I got to explain to them where we're going on that before I change and give you a whole lot more detail. Okay, Valerie, I'll come back. John, I'll come back in just a second. Go.
Yes, David Isby, Air International. Some years ago, General Holt Carlisle told me the Air Force does not buy new old airplanes. There are press reports suggesting the statement may be modified. Could you comment, please?
Say the last part of that.
Could you comment on the General Carlisle who said some years ago, the Air Force does not buy new old airplanes?
Yep. So let me start with, and I know that this has been one that's been in the media and the chief has talked about, and that's the F-15EX, or X, whichever one of those two phraseologies you all have been using. We are not backing away from the F-35 in any way, shape, or form. We are invested in the program. When our budget hits, you will see all that. All this is pre-decisional. This has been talked about, and it depends on how the budget goes and if the dollars stay the way that we've got them aligned. But we're not backing off the F-35. The F-35 is critical for what we've got to do to be able to execute the missions of the National Defense Strategy. It is critical to what we've got to do to be able to operate in that threat environment that we will have to operate in the future, and we're committed to the program. The situation we find ourselves in is that our 4th Gen fleet is aging out. If you go back and look at testimony that General Harris and I did last year, you will see that we were talking about what steps we need to do to look at our F-15C fleet. That fleet is significantly older, and we are getting to the point that we have to make a decision of how are we going to either upgrade it and pay for the upgrades and do the service life extensions, or what's the path we're going forward. The path right now, if our budget stays the way that we have anticipated, is that we will buy some F-15s to replace those. That is what we've talked about. That is what the chief communicated earlier this week or in another media interview. And that is the direction that we are going. Please, I got to go back to what I started with. We are not backing away from the F-35. We are buying throughout the years. We're doing the upgrades. We're doing what we need to be able to do to address that future threat. But we have to be able to execute the NDS and do all that in the timeline that we're working on.
General Butch, we have time for one more.
Okay, I see. I got 3 hands. I'll do those 3 and I'm done. If you need to leave, leave. John, go, and then Valerie, and then one more back there. Sorry, sir.
That's okay.
Morning, General. Thank you. Talk, if you would, about the restocking of precision munitions, where we are on that program, and what the future looks like. Are you going to maintain surge for a few years? At what point do you get comfortable, and do you think it will dip again as we start moving into developing a new generation of precision munitions?
So I won't talk about what we're going to do in the budget. I'll just give you an idea of what we have done. So we have ramped up Jdam Production to over 45,000 a year now. That was in close partnership with working with Boeing to get that to work. We had to do some Herculean efforts there and a lot of negotiating and talking about how we go do that. So we've got large investments in Jdam. We are working with the Army to max out the Hellfire production. That number has dramatically gone up, and unfortunately, John, I don't have the number we drove it to, but in partnership with Army, we've ramped up that line significantly over what it's ever been. Small diameter bomb, we're buying at 8,000 a year, I believe is the number that we're up to now that we're producing. That's actually way more than we ever thought we would buy. And that's another one where we've worked in close partnership to drive that up, and we're moving out on that, and that's replenishing. The other one that has dramatically gone up is APKWS, Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System. I think I got the acronym right. I apologize, I don't have that one written down. But that's one that went from, did I get close? Anyway, so that one's one, that APKWS that we started with and we weren't using a whole lot of, and it's dramatically ramped up, and we're working with the Navy to drive that up, and it's higher than it's ever been. So we're on a sustain. Our communication was, we need these weapons. We've got to do this not only for us, but a lot of those weapons that we're procuring, our allies and partners also use. And what we're trying to make sure is we have the capacity to buy for us, but also allow them to have the ability to buy as well. So we're trying to replenish up what we're doing to make sure, because we need to keep driving that behavior. Valerie, and I got one more.
Hi, I wanted to follow up on Courtney's questions about light attack. So you guys announced the flight experiment, the flight demos in 2016. It's now 2019, and it seems like the Air Force still doesn't really know, A, whether it has a requirement, or B, what it needs to do to fill that requirement. If you guys are talking about broadening it to potentially drones or helicopters, like General Goldfein said. So why not cancel the experiment at this point? And if the goal was either to buy planes or fail fast, how can you say this is a success?
So actually, great question. We do have a documented requirement that the Air Force has ran through the rapid requirements process to get us a documented requirement. That's been done, so that's accomplished. I'm going to answer this in phases because what you asked has got a lot of little nuances there, which is a good question to ask. On the why we would go forward with more experimentation. We must come up with an appropriate means to, at a cost-effective manner, address counter-violent extremism. What I don't want to do is end up in a position that I got F-35s chasing small buses or mopeds or whatever we may be trying to chase, because that may be the counter-violent extremist threat we're worried about. So what we want to do, what our plan is, that so the requirement's still valid. We need to continue to look at technologies and solutions. I know that many people have talked about specific platforms. What I want to talk about are not necessarily that. Technologies we may be able to put on platforms, or solutions that we may not have thought of, to look at how we go forward on this to address it. I do believe it's been a success. And I may be the only one that believes that, but I actually believe it has been a success. We tried something we hadn't done. We built a partnership with industry. We experimented. We learned a lot. And we got to the point that we weren't ready to make a large buy decision at this stage. So I still believe that is learning and working through what we talked about, and I believe that would have only been possible given Congress given us the authorities that they've allowed us to exercise. And I believe it is something that we will take the lessons learned and roll it into how we go forward. That's one of the things that I've asked the team, is to go to all the folks that participated in the experiments, collect all the lessons learned. We've got to look ourselves in the mirror and say, was that good or was it bad, and how do we do it better? We got to do our own image check, make sure we're not just, I could easily look in the mirror and say that's a good looking dude, but that would actually be a lie. That's an old bald headed guy with a big nose. So the reality is we got to look ourselves in the mirror and determine where we're really at, and we got to decide how we want to go forward. So we are learning from it, and we're going to move forward, and we are talking to industry. Last one, right here, man. You got it.
Sarah Sirota with Inside Defense. A few months ago, the Air Force announced that it was appointing an architect for the Advanced Battle Management System. I was wondering if this person's has been announced, what exactly this role is, how it's different from the Program Executive Officer, and also if the Air Force has begun the AOA for ABMS.
Okay, that was 5 questions buried in one, but you didn't even take a breath while you did it, so that was pretty impressive. So the reality of it is we've identified who the chief architect's going to be. The individual's not on board yet, but we've identified the individual, so I'm not going to announce that today. That would be me getting in front of my headlights, and I'm not going to do that. But we have done it. We've identified who it's going to be. I believe they'll be here within the next month or so is when we're expecting to have that individual on board. The way that I look at this is it's different than a PEO because this person is going to be looking horizontally at how do we set up the architecture so that everything can connect in and we can get that multi-domain command and control that General Goldfein's after. How do I set the standards that I want everything to talk to? How do I make sure that I'm not developing, which unfortunately we've done in some cases, something that communicates in this lane, and this lane, and this lane, but doesn't communicate across. That's one of the key roles that this individual is going to play in this that's different than a PEO. Okay, I went over my time, and Joel Spencer is now really questioning whether he should have brought me into this job. Thank you all very much again, and for our industry partners, thank you very much.
So much. As I recall, you went overtime in that interview you had.
That is true, sir.
So we were sort of expecting it. So not only are you a geezer, but I understand you're also a golfer.
Yes, sir.
And so we hope you have some time to play golf. If confirmed, you go move to your next job. So thank you so much. We're really proud of everything you've done, and thank you for your support and your service. Thank you very much.